Suppose you are all alone walking down the streets. From a distance, you notice a boy wiggling on his bicycle. You try to ignore him, but suddenly he hits the tree. Is helping the boy out of the situation would be your immediate response? What if it happened where you are just part of a crowd? Are you still more likely to help him? In a hypothetical situation, you might think that you would heroically save a person in an emergency, but you will be surprised at the actual rate of people helping in situations that are uncommon and life-threatening. In 1968, social psychologists Bibb, Latane, and Darley put these questions to an experiment. The study was known as the Smoky Experiment. They found out that our helping behavior in emergency situations depends heavily on the number of people present. The rate of helping is higher when we are the only witness, but we feel less pressure when we are surrounded by a larger crowd. This is called the bystander effect. The experimenters explained this with the concept of diffusion of responsibility, which holds that the personal responsibility that an individual feels decreases as the number of bystanders or witnesses increases.
For the methodology, each subject is asked to stay in a room with a one-way glass. They are given questionnaires and are told that answering it is part of the experiment. While answering, the researchers use some equipment to gradually puff smoke into the room that the subject is in. The length of time that the subject remained in the room before leaving to report the smoke was the main dependent variable of the study. Procedure. Subjects. The main subjects of the experiment were male students living in the campus residences of Columbia University. They were told that they were invited to discuss problems involved in life at an urban university. The sample consisted of undergraduate, graduate, and professional students. They were contacted by telephone and all willingly volunteered and showed up for the interview. Each subject is led to the room and is asked to fill out the questionnaire regarding the problems that they encountered while living in the university.
Experimental manipulation. 3 different conditions were put to test to record the participants' reaction given a fixed scenario. In the first condition, some subjects were alone when they filled out the questionnaire and were exposed to the critical situation. Other subjects participated in the second condition wherein they were part of 3-person groups. 2 of those people in the group were Confederates who were tasked to act as naive subjects and attempt to avoid conversation as much as possible. As the smoke was introduced, the Confederates just stared at it briefly, made no comment, but simply shrugged their shoulders, then returned to their questionnaires while occasionally waving away the smoke as they continued to fill them out. When asked about the smoke, they attempted to be as uncommunicative as possible. They even answered, "I don't know," to show apparent indifference to the smoke, which in return, no subject persisted in talking. With the third condition, 3 naive subjects were put in a group to be tested together. They did not know of each other's identity, although in 2 groups, subjects reported a nodding acquaintanceship with another subject. They did not introduce themselves to each other or attempt anything but the most rudimentary conversation, since the subjects arrived at slightly different times and had individual questionnaires to work on. Critical situation. When the researchers observed that subjects had answered 2 pages of the questionnaires, they began to release the harmless smoke, which was titanium dioxide, through a small vent in the wall. The smoke was moderately fine-textured and whitish, but it was enough to be seen by the subjects. The smoke will continue to be released in irregular intervals until the subjects leave the room. The conversations, interactions, and behaviors of the subjects were observed by the researchers from the one-way window. If the subject left the room to report the smoke, he was told that the situation would be taken care of. Otherwise, if the subject noticed the smoke and did not report it by 6 minutes, the experiment was terminated.
Results. Alone condition. When the participant was alone, his behavior was remarkably rational. Typically, the participant would look from his questionnaire, notice the smoke, obviously display a slight startled reaction, and then show a hesitation for a short time after the smoke appeared. Shortly after, the subject returned from answering the questionnaire and looked again at the smoke. Most of the participants would soon get up from the chairs, walk toward the vent, and investigate it thoroughly, sniffing the smoke, waving their hands in it, sensing its temperature, and so on. The usual alone participant would stop again, but eventually leave the room, look around outside, and calmly report the presence of the smoke to whomever they encountered. There were no signs of panic among the participants. Most of them said that there was some smoke coming through the wall in the room. 2 passive Confederates condition. The behavior of respondents with 2 passive Confederates was markedly different. Only 1 person out of 10 reported seeing smoke in this situation. The other 9 remained in the waiting area as the room filled with smoke, determinedly focusing on their questionnaire while waving the smoke away from their face. They coughed, rubbed their eyes, and opened the window to let the smoke out, but they did not report it. There is a significant difference between the response rate of 75% in the alone condition and 10% in the 2 passing Confederates condition.
3 naive bystanders. The speed of the first participant in a group to report the smoke was used as the dependent variable. Since once he had reported the smoke, the pressures on the other 2 disappeared. Out of the 24 people in the 8 groups, only 1 person reported the smoke within the first 4 minutes before the room got noticeably unpleasant. Only 3 people reported the smoke within the entire experimental method. Surprisingly, the presence of other people caused a slight but significant delay in noticing the smoke. 63% of subjects in the combined together conditions noticed the smoke within the first 5 seconds after its introduction. When the interviewer asked whether they had encountered any difficulties while filling out the questionnaire, most subjects mentioned the smoke. Those who had reported the smoke were quite consistent in describing their responses to it. Subjects who had not reported the smoke were uncertain what it was, but they all claimed they had ruled out the possibility that it was a fire. Given the obvious and significant report inhibiting effect of other bystanders, participants nearly constantly stated that they had paid little or no attention to other people's reactions in the room. Despite the fact that the presence of other individuals had vital and pervasive effect on the participants' emotions, they were either unaware of or hesitant to consider it.
Latane and Darley believed that the individual bystander is likely to observe and be influenced by the behavior of others around him. The presence of additional non-responsive bystanders was projected to induce the individual to misinterpret the situation and as a result to fail to intervene. The findings of the study significantly support the predictions of the researchers. Individuals exposed to a room filled with smoke while surrounded by passive people stayed passive, and groups of 3 naive subjects were less likely than lone bystanders to report the smoke. According to the results of this study, individuals are less likely to participate in a socially responsible activity if they believe there are other bystanders present. The findings led to the paradoxical conclusion that the fewer individuals available to take action, the more likely a victim will receive assistance or an emergency will be reported. It might also enable us to understand several serious incidents where crowds have heard but not responded to a call for aid.
One can really see how the bystander effect takes place when people are in a potentially dangerous situation. It goes to show how even though in theory, we might think that we are capable of helping if placed in an emergency with others, but in reality, sometimes our judgment can be clouded and we fail to act accordingly. More research can be explored to determine what can influence the actions of people in these groups.
This experiment gave a glimpse into the decisions and actions people make when subjected to social pressure versus when they are alone. Due to shared responsibility, people often match their reactions to the actions that other people show instead of acting accordingly to the situation. With this, it is important to always trust your own instincts, especially in critical situations.